the main mistake a woman makes at the beginning of a relationship. In this video, we'll talk about the biggest mistake a woman can make at the beginning of a relationship. And this mistake is called losing your identity. When a woman meeting a man thinks that's it, I won't let him go, I won't miss him. I have feelings for him, and in order not to lose him, I, for example, will be the way he wants. I'll listen to him and do things his way, because I want this man to be with me. And what happens at this moment is that she begins to change her lifestyle, for example, so that it would be somehow more convenient for him. She stops dancing, stops pursuing her own hobbies. She stops communicating with her friends. Because, for example, he wanted it that way, and then she, having given up all her hobbies, for example, her way of life, her friends, any communication, begins to agree with everything he tells her, with all his opinions. She thinks, I won't object. Let him feel important. Let him feel like he's in charge. Let his opinion be the main one. My opinion is somehow not so important. Now, let's talk about why this situation happens. Why might a woman experience these emotions and feelings? Why? When she meets a man, does she start to slowly give up on herself? She might start giving up her desires, preferences, and interests, everything that used to bring her joy. She might be sacrificing for the sake of the man. So why does this happen? She might give up things to please the man. So why does this happen? The first and most important fear is the fear of rejection. Perhaps she has some personal traumas, perhaps childhood trauma. Maybe she's been alone for too long. And now, meeting a man who seems perfect or unique to her, she fears that the relationship will fall apart. This fear of rejection often leads a woman to give up everything. Next, low self-esteem. Where a woman does not believe in herself, does not believe in her exclusivity and uniqueness. Where she doesn't believe that she can be loved, just as she is, with all her tastes and desires. That's where she might kind of dissolve into the man, fearing once again that she might lose him. Because of her low self-esteem, she doesn't believe that a man like him could ever love a woman like her. So now she'll be there for him in every way. For him, she's the one he wants her to be. Next comes social stereotypes that push towards self-sacrifice. Often, mothers and grandmothers hang these stereotypes on you. They say, well, who will love you? You don't do this or that. A woman should get up before the sun and work all this time. So, some such stereotypes of this kind often influence, and a woman begins to reject herself. The only problem is that when a man meets a woman, he sees who she really is. She is woven from her own hobbies, from her own interests. Her eyes light up with her life, and he likes her just like that. At the moment she starts to give up on herself, he slowly begins to lose interest in her. So, it's a trap for the woman herself. A woman who fears losing a man ends up giving up on herself, and in the end, she loses the man. And then there's past experience. For example, she had. The controller is such an endless control in the relationship, a manipulator. Perhaps it would have taken root in her head that she had to change, In order for a relationship to be happy, she feels like she has to change. She can't just be herself. She has to be someone else. Anything but herself to be happy. And again, this thought can push a woman. So, what are the consequences of this self-sacrifice and loss of identity? Let's talk about the consequences of a woman giving up on herself. And the first thing is emotional exhaustion, inner burnout. So, for example, she used to love dancing, or she would go sing, or she would meet up with her girlfriends on Fridays where they would chat about various things, maybe gossip a bit, or they had some common interests. Right now, for example, she doesn't do any of that. She doesn't go to any classes. By dancing, she does not do anything pleasant for herself, for example. She used to love dressing up, but the man thinks that's just money down the drain. So now she doesn't buy anything for herself because he feels that way. And at some point she begins to burn out. She has no feeling of fulfillment. She does not recharge herself with what once gave her great pleasure. And over time, it naturally burns out. It is impossible to draw endlessly from a vessel without refilling it. If you give something away endlessly, eventually there will be nothing left there unless you add something to it. So, to avoid burning out, you shouldn't keep giving up on yourself. Low self-esteem and ignoring one's needs often leads to decreased self-esteem. And often, for example, a woman with low self-esteem who enters into such relationships ends up giving up even more of herself. In such relationships, her self-esteem just plummets. I mean, it can't get any lower. She thinks that she's not good enough, that she's bad, that she's worse than everyone else. And over time, the man starts to feel this. He sees her through the eyes of the woman herself. And at some point, he starts to think, what am I doing with her? Loss of interest in life. Naturally, if a woman's eyes don't sparkle, if she doesn't love this life, doesn't want to live it, some happy moments, and if she's dimmed down, then of course, no one is going to fan her flame. So don't punish yourself. Love your life. Energize yourself. Reward yourself for something and treat yourself. When your eyes are shining, the man next to you will only be wanting to reflect your happiness. Next, the imbalance in the relationship is another consequence. That is, the woman gives, she feels used. That is, she, in principle, decided to abandon herself at the very beginning. She does what she thinks is necessary, believing that it will be better for the relationship. She's punishing herself in these relationships. She has already given up on herself. She feels used even though no one has actually used her. She herself built relationships this way, and now she begins to suffer. In these relationships, she thinks that she's being used. And at that moment, that's when the man starts to lose interest. To him, she stopped being an individual. She dissolved in him. Perhaps children have already appeared in children. She is everything to everyone, so she sacrifices, gives all of herself. She can say such phrases that I am not appreciated, all my love, all my goodness, I am all. It's all for you, and yet you don't love me, you don't appreciate me, for example, if you also have a family and kids. All because she does not value herself. She empties herself, and she is no longer a person. And the man really feels this. And unexpressed feelings and suppressed desires always result in conflicts. That is, at first she is afraid to talk about her emotions and feelings, about her desires, so as not to lose the man. And then, because of that, conflicts arise. That is, if at first it was possible to talk about yourself and tell about yourself, talk about your feelings, about your desires, not to lose yourself, then later it becomes more difficult. And now, problems start to get resolved through conflicts, which often destroys relationships. So, what are the signals? How do you know that you're starting to lose yourself, lose your identity? First, you sacrifice your own interests for the sake of the man's interests. There should be balance in everything. When you enter into a relationship, naturally, your lives intertwine and something shifts, something changes. But if you completely give up on yourself and your interests, while the man continues to live his wonderful life just like he did before, then in that relationship, you've just given up on yourself. And that's the first signal. Further, you always agree with his opinion. He tells you, and you feel inside that you don't agree. But you stay silent. You don't voice it. For example, you make a purchase together, and he says that it will be better this way, but you want, for example, something else. But you agree. You agree that this will be better. And in the end, once again, you give up on yourself. The fear of expressing your opinion. If you understand that you're afraid, expressing your opinion to a man is already a warning sign. People in a couple, they must communicate. They must talk about their feelings and emotions, their experiences, and their problems. If you're afraid to express your opinion in a relationship, that already shows that you're really losing your identity. And one more thing, you started changing yourself for your partner. He said somewhere in passing that there is some beautiful woman there, and you are already trying to be like her. He said he likes this and that, and you're already changing those things about yourself. You hear it and you change. You change something about yourself. Isn't that another red flag with your partner? Now, let's talk about why it's important to maintain your identity. And the first thing is emotional health. If you don't push yourself aside, if you don't shove your emotions, feelings, and desires away to put someone else on a pedestal, then you'll be emotionally healthy and you'll be an individual in the relationship. Relationships will be built on partnership where one person has emotions, feelings, hobbies, and desires, and the other person has emotions, feelings, experiences, and hobbies too, and it's all on equal footing. And then the woman doesn't feel used. Her self-esteem is just fine. She feels great in this relationship. Relationships are friendly, partnership-based, where there are no losers and no winners. Everyone does something and gets pleasure from it. It's filled, there's an exchange of energies. An interesting woman. She's not empty. She's captivating for a man. And a man likes a woman like that. Although often men trap themselves. He has an idea of what his woman should be like. And he's telling the girl, for example, his future wife, how he wants things to be. And if this woman has low self-esteem, afraid of losing this man right now, she will lose herself. So the first thing that's important is not to lose yourself. Next, respect from a man is another reason to maintain your identity. A man respects and values a woman who respects and values herself, who does not deny herself. A man eventually turns away from the woman who has turned away from herself. Over time, he just doesn't get it. She seems nice and she's a good homemaker. And this often leads to stories of divorces and infidelity when she says, "But I'm a good mother, a good homemaker. I do everything for the family, everything for him, everything for them. And he is such a scoundrel, a villain. He cheats. He left for another who completely the opposite of me. That's why he left for someone else, because he found a woman who values herself. And here, once again, balance is necessary. Naturally, you don't need to go overboard and, for example, think so much about yourself, but you shouldn't forget about yourself either. And another reason why it is important to maintain identity is the stability of relationships. In relationships where there's equality, they're stable, they're strong, and they develop harmoniously. Neither partner tries to change the other. No, in these relationships, there are no losers or winners. There aren't. Those who feel used, and relationships develop harmoniously. That's all I have for this video. It was me, Elisa Vardam. I hope for your likes and subscriptions. Leave a comment about what you'd like to discuss in my new videos. Don't forget to hit the bell icon. And goodbye, everyone.